Hello. This is going to be a fairly basic introduction to the programming of bass lines and hopefully give you a few hints and tips as well. It's not meant to be able to make you produce the latest hip hop funk rhythm or anything like that. It's purely just so you can start thinking about doing your own bass lines if you haven't already, or like I say, just a few ideas that might help you stretch yourself a bit further. The part of the joy of doing music is learning new things, and if I can teach you one new thing, this video's done its job. So, all I've done, I've got a very simple bass sound. It happens to be the Bassline plugin on the MPCX you see here, and I've got a very simple drum pattern. Now, if you're a beginner to bassline programming things, you'll probably use a step sequencer. And what I'll do, you normally have it on a 16th. I'll just tilt this back one more, just to might make it a bit better. Yeah. So if you want to look at the drums, you can see they're on steps 1, 9, at bar 1, and steps 1 and 9 at bar 2, and then the snare is on steps 5 and 13 of bars 1 and 2 as well. A lot of people, especially when they first start now doing music, electronic music, maybe they'll only do 1 or 2 bars. There's no reason you can't do 4 or even 8 bars just to vary your bass line over that length of time. Of course, these days with modern drum machines with song mode, you can just do lots of different variations and then chain them together as well. And I actually do that sometimes by just combining the sequences, so that I've got, I may have 1 bar of one bass line, 2 bars with another bass line, and then another bar of something else. It might be a little break or something, bass break of some description. And I will then combine them into a 4-bar sequence together, which then I can make a longer melody line on or something like that. And I do that a lot in my music making. Anyway, we're getting slightly ahead of ourselves there, but so like I say, this is this very basic drum beat. So we go on to track 2, which is where the bass line is. It does help if I go into edit mode. There's my little red bob. There it is. Right, the first beat of the bar, step 1, is when you're first doing a lot of bass programming, always put a bass note on there, because that tends to be where you're hooked to. And you can see it's already making a little bit more of a groove than just the drums on its own. Right, so what I've done there was you see, I only used 1 note. And there's a lot of really good songs out there where they do essentially just use 1 note. I started off just with the bass note as I showed you on the first step of each bar. And this is one of the reasons, again, just to use 2 bars usually as a default, or at least I do use it as a default, because you can actually let the listener's ears have a little bit of a rest. You may not want them to have a little bit of rest, of course, especially in dance music. But even in dance music, you still quite often get breaks, or things drop out for a bit, just to, in effect, give the ears a rest. It's more meant to be more musical than that, but it does pay to let your listeners' ears have a rest during the piece of music. So, you'll notice I've actually got very little actually on the beat of the The main beats, the 4/4, the main beats are steps 1, step 5, step 9, and step 13. And you can see I've got one there and one there, and they're the only ones that are actually on the beat. And that's what gives you that interesting syncopation. The excuse me. Step 3 is the offbeat, as is steps. Let me get this right: 7, 11, and 15. So they're in effect your offbeats, and they will usually give you something interesting. Okay, so let's just clear some of this off. Let's just we'll just have it be on the offbeat. Let's get rid of those as well. So that again gives you another different feel. But just to give you a little bit more variations, you can do ones in the other steps. So now, the reason I did that was just purely for taste. You may have preferred it the other way around, where there was one in step 15. Yeah. So even just using one note, you've got all these various syncopations around. One of the keys there is I haven't messed with the drum beat at all. But of course, it's really the interplay between the drums and the bass that really gives you your interesting groove. Yeah, and one of the things not to do too often is to do snare flams. Where you do a double hit on the snare. I can do that for this example. It doesn't quite work with the bass now. So that's just where you need to work them together. But it's still interesting. It's not wrong. And there's no such thing as wrong. It's what you think it sounds like, and it's what you want to do. So, okay, so straight off the bat, that is about putting your notes in the different places. But well worth keeping, especially on the first beat of the bar, especially on the first bar of the sequence, having the bass note there to help set the groove, as it were. Can't think of a better way of putting it, to be honest. If you do things all on the beat, it's not that interesting. Yeah. Okay. So even just by taking those notes and taking them off onto the offbeat, so you'll do the same with the second bar as well. Oh, see, I've done that one wrong. I'll leave it there. But again, you see that one. I've actually put it on the wrong step. It should be on step 13, and I've put it on step 12. But it's still interesting. You get that little pause before the snare hits, and again, this is part of what's really interesting, doing bass and drums together. And it's what people like jazz musicians in particular will do a lot. You want that subtle interplay. Yeah, things do not have to be rigid, and they'll often sound a lot better if they're not rigid. Right, so that's just messing with one note. One thing I did mean to mention before I started is, we're talking about the interplay between the drums and your bass. It's your bass drum. It doesn't have to be in tune. Some people will say your bass drum has to be tuned to the same scale as the bass sound, and that's twaddle in my mind. it's just got to sound good. You know, if it doesn't, if you didn't like the sound of this snare drum, hang on a minute, sorry, bass drum, sorry. Let me get rid of the snare just a minute. Sorry, went the wrong way there. No, you see, I've deliberately chosen these because I think they go together. Yeah. You may not think they go together, and that's fine. You know, you do what you want for your music, and I'll do what I want for mine. Yeah, and obviously things will change as you layer in more and more stuff. And obviously the bass sound as well. Usually you will use more than one note, which we'll move on to now. After a brief mention about this is one of the other things I quite often do, especially if I've written the bass line first. Sometimes I've come up with an idea for a bass line and oh, that's a good riff, especially if I'm just tinkering on the keyboard or something. And I'll do that first, and then actually I'll just program the drums around it. Especially the snare, I usually put the bass drum to be my click, if you like, that I'm recording to. Because I normally play my bass lines in manually. I rarely actually program them in like this. And I normally, and like I say, this is 1/16, so you've got 16 steps to a bar, like most drum machines. I actually normally record in 30 seconds. So I've got 32 steps to a 4/4 bar, just because it gives you that bit more nuance. And you know, I was saying about having that timing slightly off a moment ago, because I had something on step 12. You can do a lot more of that, and there's no point in getting really anal about it, because and the average listener isn't going to notice. You're going to notice because you know you did it, but your average listener just listens to the overall song, and they'll go, oh, that's a good groove, but they've no idea it's just because you've just slipped a note in one bar further back somewhere or something like that. And they're probably not even interested to know. You know, other musicians might be, but you know, like I say, it's so easy to get lost down the rabbit hole, just endlessly fiddling with little details that actually, at the end of the day, don't make that big a difference to the song. Anyway, sorry, that's a slight aside. I did what I wanted to emphasise there was the thing about, you know, one of the things I'd quite often suggest doing is just record with the bass drum, and you could start with the bass drum. You know, you want a bit more of a machine gun bass drum, so I'll just get rid of that. It wasn't the easiest way of getting rid of them, but I'll do it that way anyway. So let's say we wanted more kicks. Yeah, let's say we want even more kicks. Oh, we'll do it again. Sorry, keep meaning to go track 2 and undo that. Now that doesn't sound much like I recorded it. Okay, so we'll just get rid of that little glitch there. So let's have a look. And let's see if we can fix this. Right, so I've got rid of that bum note at the end. Right. Now if you look, I've stayed on the beat with some of them, gone to the offbeat there and there, back on the beat, on the beat there, and then that's not on the beat or on the offbeat. But like I say, that isn't necessarily wrong. So let's just move that one back onto the beat. Let's do it the other way around. that on the beat. I'll tell you why in a minute. Now, to me, that sounds better. It was interesting it being off the beat, but it was disturbing the groove too much. So you can see I've got a mixture of just on the beat and off the beat, and I haven't done anything complicated about being on some of the odd steps. I'm either on the beat or off the beat completely on that one. Just a quick little riff I did. And to me, that sounds fine with the bass drum. I'm also just realised, of course, I'm also doing a recording on a phone, so it might not sound quite safe to you anyway. Right, so let's go to the kick. So not get too distracting by the drums, just going back to the bass line. See, I thought the higher note went well with the snare. So it's just something to try. So don't try and do the bass line in isolation to the drums is part of what I'm emphasising here. Have a listen at this, even this basic stage. And I have to say I actually quite like this. Okay. So the thing I would emphasise with that is you can see I've very much stuck to my. There's a note on the first beat of the bar on both bars into the sequence, and I've very much kept I've almost kept my one note thing, but that's really just to keep it simple for you guys to follow. Just a few notes just to create a bit of variation. And then what you might do to then start creating variations, one of the things you can do, and most drum machines will do this, let me go to the main screen, is on here you've got transpose. So let's go the other way, you can hear it better. But what I would suggest there, let me stop that, sorry. What I would suggest there, if you do transpose, check it still sounds all right with your drums. And if it doesn't, just go in and change the notes. If there's one particular note you think, that doesn't sound quite as nice, or even just try doing different notes anyway. So you could move it. Let me scroll up. Just want to make sure I didn't book it up. So let's say I decided I want to do that one. Yeah. So I want to go even higher. Yeah. So very quickly, but just by transposing and going, oh, actually, I'll just tweak a couple of notes. I've got another bass line, which would be a nice contrast to that. So do play with transpose. It's quite fun to go lower, but what you have to watch, you'll probably know this, but what you have to watch is there'll be most bass sounds sound good in a couple of octaves at most, and then they start, particularly when you get lower, they might go quieter, or the attack, they don't as crisp, they don't come on so quickly, which can be fine if you're doing a slower bass line, but if you're doing a quicker bass line, you'll definitely need a quick attack on the bass sound. So so that's just something to bear in mind. You'll actually find, just as a slight aside, that quite often bass lines make quite good lead sounds. I find them quite interesting. I've done it a few times, including the bassline plugin like I'm using here with the MPC. I've actually used a couple of sounds on this for lead lines. Right, before we finish, as we're pretty much done, what I want to run you through is, obviously you've got things like, sorry, I've just thought I need to get rid of all those extra kick drums. I'll tell you what I'll just erase the bloody lot and start again. So one one of the things to bear in mind here is, sorry, not sequence one, track two, right. You've got another thing that a lot of machines have is note repeat. Now again, this has been done to death in quite a lot of music, but it doesn't mean you can't use it. It can sound really good. Like, I actually thought that sounded pretty good. What I tend to do is just put in a little bit of variation, so you could record it. I'll just take it off record so don't muck it up. Okay. So you might go. Okay, so just, it's worth just sometimes doing, if you're going to have it running through all the way through your song, if you can do those subtle variations, it just makes it a bit more interesting, really. And again, doing these variations just creates a bit more interest, if you can chain your different patterns together. An eighth that was 1/16th, so you're getting 16 of those bass pulses every bar. But 1/8 can be quite good, and I can demonstrate that by just doing this. I mean, this might not be the fastest way of doing it, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I'm not talking because I'm having to concentrate. Here we go. Yeah, last one. Here we go. Now, this is another good example where actually that one's a bit lost in it. So let's get rid of that. So again, there you are. Just because, again, I didn't like how it was with the snare, I'll just a few minor tweaks, and you've got something a bit different and a bit more interesting. And see, and just messing with one note on it, just messing with one pulse, going, 8 times a bar. So that's steps 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, and 15. And just by moving the notes around, you can just do something a bit interesting. And then if you want to provide further variations, this is when you drop more notes in. So you notice I took this one off here because I just felt it was too much. You might decide actually you like that and you want it on all the time. And you see now we've gone off the on the beat or the off beat. We're this is where you can create the subtleties and more interesting. So this is on steps. Hang on, just let me make sure. Step 8 and step 15. So again, very that quick and easy, and really all I can say to you with that is, use your ears, and you saw how quickly that happened from just doing a quick note repeat in. and just experiment. I mean, that's what I did. I wasn't sure that was good. That's what that was going to do. I had an idea it might do it, but it also depends so much on the sound you're using. If I do that with a different sound, let's go and do that with a different sound. It won't be the same at all. So that's pretty cool. I actually rather like that, but it's not my bass line anymore, is it? So I could get into that. But this is one of the fun things about messing about and doing stuff, isn't it? And one of the reasons I've loved using MPCs for over 20 years now is that you record the MIDI, not the audio, and then you can fiddle with it to your heart's content. And something like that, I'm actually debating keeping that now to have a fiddle with later, because I could see potential. That would then, I'd put another bass line under that, but it could be, this is what the other sort of bassline thing about with dance music in particular, but most modern pop music, you tend to have a fairly percussive bass sound, but there's no reason you can't have a slow bass sound. So something like this that's got a lots of activity higher up, you might just want a gentle bass line. So let's just do that. Didn't set out to do this. Oh, that's not low enough. Let's try. I could really do with some strings actually. Sorry, this is might take a few minutes because I haven't planned to do this. Sometimes I'm good at doing this. This is one of the reasons I have ideas for songs actually, I suppose. So strings. Should we text? We don't want to string. Oh, let's try that one. So you notice there, I was not trying to change notes quickly. I'd got a fairly slow attack, so it was fading in really nicely. And again, I was actually quite like that, but it's not how I would use it, but I actually quite like that, how that works. So that's that sound I was just using as bass. So, like I say, this is just really the basics of giving you some ideas and how to set off doing bass lines. And I hope that was useful. If you've got any ideas you'd like to pass on, please do put them in the comments. One of the things I love about, I'm on a forum for the Tangible Ways AE modular synth. One of the things I love is the sharing of ideas. Nobody knows everything. It's physically impossible about just one piece of electronic gear. So, any ideas that help everybody have more fun is great. So, look forward to hearing from you.